This episode of the Oh No 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 podcast is sponsored by Dynamic Industrial Services, the rope access specialists. Every week we talk about the Rovers' latest attempts to climb the SPFL ladder, but sometimes even a ladder won't reach. DIS are specialists in working at height, offering maintenance, inspection, repair and more, right across Scotland. So if you need a rope access specialist and you want a premiership service, visit dynamicindustrialservices.co.uk to find out more.
Welcome back to the latest episode of the Oh No 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 podcast, as we reconvene on the back of a glorious and triumphant penalty shootout victory, or something like that. My name is still Duncan Cameron, and joining me for this one tonight, I've got Leslie Mayborn. First of all, how are you, Les?
This place is not a place of honour. No highly esteemed dead is commenced here. Nothing valued is here. What's here is dangerous and repulsive to us. It could either be the warning that's been developed for long-term nuclear waste, or it could be the summary of the highlights package that needs to go on Saturday's game.
That's a real deep cut. I really like that. We've also got Callum and Blair. How are you, Callum?
I have awoken from my Rovers-induced coma. that was Saturday's game.
Fair play. And we've also got Blair Hopcroft. And before we get to the football, Blair, just a big kind of pat on the back for you, I think. You've just cycled the North Coast 500 in, was it a week that took you?
Yeah, 7 days. So I left Inverness last Monday and then came back over the Keswick Bridge a couple of hours ago.
How are the legs?
Actually, surprisingly okay. I'm not sure I'll be able to stand up tomorrow, but I'm feeling okay at the moment.
Fair play. That is a fairly phenomenal effort. To be honest, I'd probably rather talk about cycling. But we should really discuss Wraith Rovers 1, Hamilton Accies 1. So the first half was a bit of a kind of war of attrition. And the deadlock was broken in the 56th minute by Sean McGinty's header from a corner. And the score was levelled 5 minutes later by Lee Kilday's much funnier header. And finished that way, finished one each. But the Rovers took a pointless point from the shootout at the end. Now, Les, that result does mean that the Rovers are knocked out of the competition. With that in mind, and the various kind of permutations that might have been required to see us through, give me just your kind of overall thoughts on the kind of the group stage and the outcome and the overall sort of performance, please.
It was a bit of a kind of boot in the balls to see towards the end that had we won, we might actually have been in with a shout of going through. However, it didn't take me long to think we didn't really deserve to go through on the basis of yesterday's performance. I mean, if we'd been playing kind of like Partick had today in their game against Motherwell, we'd been banging at the door and, we'd had balls cleared off the line and then Linus playing like prime Buffon, then you might have kind of felt a bit aggrieved. But I think from when the team lines came out yesterday, the very clear steer was that we weren't going to be risking anybody on the kind of outside chance that we might get through. You didn't have guys on the bench that you might have been calling on for 20 minutes if we really needed it. So the sort of steer was, if we go through, but we're not going to risk anybody to do it. And I think what really did for us, I mean, you could point to the Stranraer game and not getting the goal difference, but that late winner for Ross County, I think, is what really did for us across the piece. And it's unfortunate with the group's been structured the way they are, that it is very, very hard to get through if you don't have a very strong performance. But I think particularly from the last game yesterday, I don't think we can feel too hard done by.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look at other teams and other results across that group stage, where you've got like Hibs getting tanked off Kelty, who otherwise have been pretty terrible. Livingston lost to Spartans yesterday. There's numerous others, Championship and Premiership sides dropping points all over the place. And actually this year, the Rovers were pretty much straight down the line, in as much as we beat the two teams who are ranked below us, we lost to the team who are ranked above us, and we drew with the side who are in the same division as us. And I think that if you took that as an average result across all the times that we've had the group stage, probably for a Championship side, half the time that gets you through and half the time it doesn't. And it's kind of like, look, you've shot par and it's kind of fine. Like, if you rack up the goals, you might get through, you might not. And that, especially with the bonus point, really at 9 points, you've got a very good chance, but you're still relying on the goal difference. Callum, I'm putting you in the spot a little bit. I apologise if you don't have this at your fingertips, but you tend to be across this kind of stuff. Would it have been 4-1? Is that the result we would have required yesterday as the other games finished?
I feel like it was either 2 or 3 goals you would have needed to win by. Anyway, because
someone had it as 4-1. And I didn't double check it.
I think it might have been 3-1 because, trying to think, our goal difference was +4, and Livingston, who were the third best second place team, I think, going into today's game. This was before Motherwell against Partick Thistle, so I've got no idea if that changed anything, but I'd seen Livingston also had a goal difference of +4, so I think we might have had to have won by a goal. We would have to have won, but I feel like if we had won by 2 or 3, then we would have got that second place as well. So I think it was sort of like a safety net, I think.
Yes, it's kind of on a knife edge in the sense that a single goal in a number of different games would have changed that equation at different points.
There was so many things that could have went. We could have won like 5-0, but like who knows what anyone else could have done.
That's it. The 5 minutes.
Won 6-0.
The 5 minutes I spent talking about permutations in the last episode was a complete waste of time, because there was a couple that I was like, assuming these things happen, and none of it did, and it was completely topsy-turvy and fun. Like the one thing I basically said was guaranteed to happen is that Ayr would hammer Bucky, and they kind of scraped through that one, and Montrose beat Clyde and all this other stuff. But I think that, if anything, I mean, actually, no, maybe I'll ask somebody the question instead of just assuming. Blair, do you think that justifies Ian Murray maybe not taking too many chances, not going, kind of gung-ho, not going daft, and probably, and this is my opinion more than anything else, kind of treating the game like a bit of a friendly, given there's so many other permutations and you don't necessarily have your fate in your own hands, regardless of what happens?
It's a funny one, because I feel like he's almost damned if he doesn't, damned if he doesn't. So, I mean, let's turn it around and suppose he puts Scott Brown on the bench or Ewan Murray on the bench or whatever, brings one of them on, and they end up getting an injury. And exactly the same thing happens anyway. We win the game, Livy go on to win the game. Because there's also the whole, not to get too scientific about it, but the whole Schrodinger's cat thing. Like, you can't observe something without affecting the thing that you're observing. So, the Rovers are winning with 10 minutes to go. Livy know that they need to win by a goal or two. It changes their game. Like, there's that kind of snowball thing as well. And if he ends up with Scott Brown out for 6 weeks and we don't get through, he gets vilified for having put him in the first place. So, I don't know. It's one of them. I don't think I think it's maybe a tad unfair to say he treated it like a friendly. I think he risked what he had to risk. And he did the best that he could with the cards that he had, but he wasn't willing to put the league campaign in jeopardy, because ultimately the league campaign what matters. You get through in this cup and you get one more tie probably. If you're lucky, you get 2. But I mean, let's be perfectly honest. I know that we did it 30 years ago, but it's very unlikely we're going to go all the way through and kind of win this competition. And actually, we don't need to be winning this competition. We need to be winning the championship. So I have no issues at all actually with them focusing on the league. I think it's sensible as much as anything else.
Yeah, it's maybe a bit of a coping mechanism for me, but you get through. It can bring its own problems. We ended up missing Liam Dick for a league game because he was sent off in the League Cup and all that. The last, this time last year, and all that kind of stuff. It's maybe actually, with one eye on the league, is a free weekend in the middle of August.
It's not a bad thing.
Not necessarily the worst thing, is it? So,
it's like during the game, one of the about 100 Aki's fans that were at the game, it's like one of them was from Pal for Uni, and it's like he was saying about how Aki's didn't have anything to play for, and the permutations for us to go through were just ridiculously unlikely. So it felt like it was like a weird middle ground between a competitive fixture and a friendly, because it's like you're there, it's just like you want to win because it's like if you finish higher up in the group stage, you get a bit more prize money. But at the end of the day, it's like, does it really matter?
Bigger fish to fry, isn't it?
Aye.
And that, to move on to the game itself, so as we've kind of alluded to there, Ian Murray didn't take any chances with his lineup or his bench, really. So Paul Hanlon, Ewan Murray, Scott Brown, Sam Stanton and Lewis Vaughan all kind of sat out entirely, which is that's a pretty fierce five-a-side team, as long as one of them's happy to go and goal. Try their best. So it did mean that Liam Dick and Kai Montague, I think, were the two kind of notable starters that you maybe wouldn't have necessarily picked otherwise. Les, when that kind of team sheet, or graphic, as I suppose is more likely, first appeared, any particular reaction from you? Anything you were concerned about or looking forward to based on that?
I was pleased to see Kai Montague getting a crack of the whip, because I think it's the kind of competitive game where if you're not going to give him a run out in that game, then you're probably not going to have a chance of actually seeing what he can do in a competitive fixture before the league kicks in. So a game like that where the stakes are not non-existent, but to a certain extent out of our hands, it seemed a good chance to give Montague a run out. And I was trying to kind of figure out in my head where he was going to end up playing, and he sort of ended up starting it anyway in that kind of number 10 role. Other than that, again, it was good to see that we now have that depth at centre-back where we can rack up 2 injuries at centre-back. And if had we had 2 players out injured at centre-back and Scott Brown unavailable last season, that would have been absolute panic stations, and it would have involved absolutely horrible things happening, like people playing on the right of a back three and things like that. But, we've now got that depth in defence, at least, that Dick can slot into the centre-back role and Stevenson can play at left-back. So I think, it was good to see that depth, but also the right timing to give Montague a start, I thought.
Yeah, I thought so too. It's just nice to see, and as you say, it's the kind of game to do that, and it's nice that he is viewed as an option like that. By way of contrast, and that this is not anyone from within the football club, but I kind of agree with it. Ian Collin, in his write-up in the Courier, said that the Rovers bench was basically, it was Andy McNeil, sort of the 3, so Gibson, Connolly, and Callum Smith, the 3 that came on. And then he said something along the lines of, the word he used was viable, like they were the 3 viable options, and Jake Nicholson. And I don't think that's like a dig at all, but I think it's an accurate reflection of his kind of standing in the squad. He's just come out of the Community Foundation a fortnight ago. Fundamentally, in a game against another championship side, he's not really a viable option. He's kind of an emergency option. He's there for the experience. Fine. It's nice to see that Kai Montague is in sort of a bracket above that. I think if Jake Nicholson had been starting that game yesterday, you would be looking at some fairly disastrous circumstances having happened on Saturday morning. Whereas Kai Montague's obviously at least just part of the thinking, and that's nice to see. It's good that he's kind of at that level. And it was good to see him get a decent bit of game time, just to get a proper look at him. And it does certainly look like the intention from the minutes that he's had. I think have pretty much all been at kind of in number 10. He's going to be in place of Sam Stanton in the games that I've seen him anyway. So looks like that's the position we kind of expect to see him. So Callum, we'll go into the game itself. The first half, as we've touched upon, was somewhat short on incidents. I think it probably kind of typified by the fact that I think the best chance of the half was Ollie Shaw going through one-on-one entirely by accident, where Dean Linus just hammers the ball up the field. And I don't know who it was in the Accies midfield, just misses it entirely. And all of a sudden, Ollie Shaw's going clean through. And it's a great kind of recovery tackle from Liam Dick to sort of divert it over the bar. What were your thoughts on the first half and the pattern of play that sort of developed there?
The first 45 minutes of football had 45 minutes of football and nothing else. Like, it was nothing. It was just nothing happened apart from that 101. I think Kev made a couple of saves as well, but it was the sort of stuff that you expect him to make. And
he made 3 saves in about the space of a minute. Which the
Rovers Twitter said.
Rovers Twitter referred to it as a triple save, and not to get too football cliches about it.
It needs to be save, not save.
Yeah, it's a single action.
Save. It was
like David McGurn. Classically, a triple save. That's not a triple save. That's 3 good saves in the space of a minute. I think the third of those is probably the most kind of notable, if just because it comes from a really slack back pass from Dylan Easton. Just he's not looking. It's almost a blind back pass, and Kev's kind of sharp enough to get out and block that. Leslie, the sort of pattern of the first half, it wasn't an awful lot of chances, as Callum says, but Hamilton, for me personally, I thought were very much on top in terms of the kind of pattern of the game. Do you agree with that? And if you do you think there's maybe a pattern there with opposition sides who play a 3-5-2 and the Rovers kind of getting to grips with it?
I think there are 2 things there. One is that if you go back, and I know we're dealing with a very small sample size here, we've got a pretty atrocious record against Hamilton sides managed by John Rankin. And he seems to be one of these otherwise quite perfunctory managers. And Lee Boolan was another one, and Alan Johnson at Queen of the South before us, who seems to be able to send out pretty well-drilled sides that just somehow seem to kind of run us over every time they come out. Now, as I say, I appreciate we're dealing with a very small sample size here, but this is not the first time we've really struggled against a John Rankin Hamilton side, most notably in the Challenge Cup final. I think that is another point, though, that we have struggled. The Inverness game at the end of last season was a great example of that. We've struggled against sides of the back 3. Ordinarily, I think if we'd had more bodies available, we could have gone to a back 3 or some kind of variation thereof at half time. And, if we'd had one or more of Murray and Hanlon on the bench, then you might have expected us to do that, to kind of just try and match them up, because the Inverness game at the end of last season was a great example of that. We were getting completely overrun against a pretty perfunctory but well-disciplined and well-drilled side. But when we came out and matched them up, that's when it swung a bit. So, I think the curse of John Rankin seems to be coming into force, but also absolutely I would agree that we simply didn't have the bodies to be able to change things up at half time yesterday.
Yeah, it's probably worth mentioning that if we do have a 3-5-2 issue, James McPake's Dunfermline are the exception to that rule. Almost invariably play a 3-5-2, and we did not have any bother with it. But
I'm going to say as well, just to not to argue completely against Les's point, but we did also completely destroy Hamilton last year in the Cup.
That's right.
And like the 3-5-2 thing, I think it's a really good point in the sense of the Ross County game. So I know I wasn't on. I'd planned to be on through the week, but I managed to get myself into a youth hostel with no internet and nowhere to record. It was more of a problem for me in the Ross County game because they were utilising the width. So all of their threat came through the good James Brown that they've got on the right hand side. And both goals came from him. Both scored by yon big, tall striker. So for me, the only way that we could have kind of cancelled out the width, because the problem we had was that when the fullback kind of pushes, does Dylan Easton go or does I've forgotten his name already and he's just signed, Lewis Stevenson, does he go? Do you know what I mean? They get caught in that kind of whose man is it? And Easton, for all his talents and all his hard work and endeavour, he's not the greatest defender. So it kind of leaves you short. So I'd said the same thing at half time in the Ross County game. Actually, we need to go 3 at the back just to match the width so that you've got, Stevenson on one side and Freeman on the other, and your 3 centre halves. And I think Les is right. We didn't have the bodies on Saturday to do it any justice.
It was
centre.
Sorry, it was that exact setup that kind of caught my eye yesterday, because it was Regan Tumlety, and actually in the kind of opening minutes when you're trying to work out who's doing what and how's John Rankin set this up, I actually thought he was playing right wing, and I had to kind of work my way back to, if you were going to plot this out, it's a 3-5-2 and he's the wing back. But he was playing so far advanced on that side, and it wasn't necessarily pinning Dylan Easton back, but he's definitely looking over his shoulder, and his starting position is 10 yards deeper because he doesn't want to leave Lewis Stevenson with 2 boys to worry about. And I thought it was notable that Dylan Easton said after the game, in the first half, he didn't think the Rovers had got their press right, and I think that's a symptom of that. Because you've basically got 5 across the back that they can pass to, and you've got boys like Jack Hamilton, Josh Mullins further up than Dylan Easton is, and then hopefully Kai Montague. At best, you've got 3 trying to press 5, and it's never really going to work as much as you would like. So, yeah, I did think that was the dominant feature of the first half. I thought that was kind of what gave Accies as much of the ball as they had, and then I think we got a little bit of not a let off by any means at all, but John Rankin made 3 substitutes at half time, presumably that he always intended to make. I don't think that was based on the pattern of the game at all. I think that was a case of they had nothing to play for. He wanted to get minutes into people. And I think those changes helped even up the balance a little bit. But despite that, Accies did still take the lead. A corner kick, kind of 10 minutes after half time. Blair, do you want to give me your thoughts on the opener?
It's like looking back in time, wasn't it? It felt like exactly the same goal we conceded 35 times last season. Just really frustrating because it just never really felt, as much as they had a bit of the ball and they were kind of creating a little bit, it never really felt like they were going to score. Like, it kind of felt a bit of a flat game. There didn't seem to be, I wasn't there, but there didn't seem to be an awful lot of atmosphere either. It seemed to be generally pretty flat. So to concede a goal from a corner with a header like that, I don't know, it was disappointing. It's the kind of thing that Murray has had rightly been criticised for, and I think has done everything right in terms of trying to deal with it. And then, 2 of those options are out injured, and you're kind of back to where we were. Fordyce definitely attacks the ball. Dick's a good header out of the ball, but it doesn't, it doesn't command quite the same way. It was just a rotten goal to concede.
I think we spoke about it a lot last season, that when you're setting up these set pieces and you start matching, your best headerer against their best headerer, and sometimes the Rovers, once you've got past kind of your top 3, you're like, dearie me, some of these boys are off at wee. Like, this is like Aidan Connolly's trying to pick up a guy who's 6'3" and all that kind of stuff. And I think with this one, it's Jack Hamilton is sort of, he's man marking McGinty to begin with, and just as the ball struck, Hamilton takes a step forward and McGinty takes a step back, and just in the time it takes the ball to get to them, that becomes a huge difference, and there's like two guys between them. And as you say, by the time the ball's actually in, Fordyce is the closest to it, but McGinty's kind of coming onto the ball, and it's a really good header, and it's this kind of thing that happens. But you can see it in Jack Hamilton's reaction as he turns to look to see who headers it, and he sees it's Sean McGinty. You just see he's not beating himself up about it, but you can see he just kind of goes, that was my guy.
The one question though I would love to ask you, and I know Race TV are never going to do it, and quite rightly. Why do we? I hate this because you get the why do we take short corners? Why do we do this? And there's always a reason. Why do we have 11 men back at a corner? It's the one question that I just don't understand. What is Aidan Connolly offering you? What is Dylan Easton offering you? Other than the lack of them needing to leave anybody of any kind of talent back. It just seems so counterproductive that you're almost inviting pressure. And not just pressure, we suffer from chaos in the box. How do you create chaos in the box? Have 20 people inside the 18-yard box at any one time and you're going to have chaos. It's just, I don't know why he does it.
Yeah, I think the thing for me with that is, it would be fine if we were doing it and we weren't conceding a lot of set pieces. But given we're conceding from quite a lot of set pieces anyway, you might as well give yourself an outball and at least try and counteract it on the ones that you don't directly concede from.
What do we have?
Yeah, but I mean, it's astonishing the number of managers who do it. But yes, you are straying into the realm of football questions that get asked at AGMs.
Yeah, exactly.
With every single football club's AGM, every single year, somebody will ask, why are we worse than everybody else at throw-ins?
Yeah.
And I think the answer to that is, throw-ins are quite shit for everyone. Like, there's no... Other than since Rory Delap retired, nobody has a strategy for throw-ins because there isn't a good one.
I actually remember really quickly. I remember going to one of these meetings once, and it was under John McGlynn, and somebody asked, and I won't name him because it was really, really stupid, but asked them, why do we only ever win by one goal? Wouldn't it make more sense if we were 2 goals up, so that when we concede, it wasn't a draw and we were winning? And John McGlynn literally looked at him and went, yeah, there's 11 boys out there trying to stop us doing that, and we're trying to do that. A conscious effort.
Yeah, it boggles the mind sometimes. Right, let's have some fun and talk about the equaliser, because if the Rovers weren't doing an awful lot to cheer us up, Hamilton Accies certainly were. Callum, this is a lovely little header from Lee Colday. A lot of strikers, I think, would be quite happy with that.
Oh, it's one of the funniest things I've seen at Starks Park for a good wee while. Because the cross itself, it's such a nothing cross. Like, I don't think it was going to anyone. I don't think it was anywhere near anyone on our team. And so, of course, the goalie he's come out to go and collect it. Surely he must have shouted, leave it, or keepers, or something along those lines. But for whatever reason, Kilday's just slight depth of the head, just towards the ball, and it just takes it that inch too far away for Dean Linus to, get to it in time. So you just see it just bounce next to him, and you're watching, and you're like, no way. No way, that's going in. You just see it just start to bounce and slightly curve towards the inside of the post. It's like watching it in slow motion for the time it was, and it's seeing it just bounce in off the post. And it was a good laugh. It was a real good laugh.
if you're on the other side, that categorically goes down as agonising. the path that the ball took and the time it took to get there.
It's like I sent the highlights to my pal because he didn't get a proper look at it. I just described it to him, and I said to him, "Look, I'll send you the highlights." And so I was like, I sent him to it, and he just messages back just saying, "Typical Ackies."
Leslie, in the kind of grand scheme of that goal, you've kind of got 2 Rovers players involved and 2 Ackies players involved. So Josh Mullen is kind of chipped ball towards the box. Jack Hamilton's racing in to chase it down. Lee Kildare headers it into the goal, and Dean Linus is there somewhere. How are you apportioning kind of blame and credit for that? It's a 4-part question, but how are you apportioning kind of blame and credit across those 4 players there? Who's to blame and who's getting the plaudits for that, do you think?
I had my sensible head on as I was watching this, and I thought this is almost one of these ones where you can't really apportion much blame or credit to anybody. It's one of these things that happens, and my immediate thought was, oh, brilliant, a freak goal. Because we have been on the receiving end of that so many times last season. You know, completely against the run of play, you've not done very much. Suddenly, a freak goal happens, and bang, it completely changes the momentum of the game. So this went in, and I was like, all right, come on, let's go. This is it. You know, this is retribution for Ali Adams or something like that. I think if you were trying to figure out what was kind of going on there, okay, Josh Mullen put a good ball in, a decent ball in. Jack Hamilton was in the place you would probably want your centre forward to be, which is a big improvement over what we've had in past seasons. So he was in the right place. Callum makes a good point there that you could maybe look at the Ackies' defence and say the communication could have been better there. But oh my goodness, what a beautiful header it was. I mean, if that had been Harry Kane or Jude Bellingham, BBC Sport would have had a 1,500-word essay and there would have been a ballet production coming out about it and all the rest. But no, I mean, my sort of takeaway was it was the kind of freak goal. It's one of these things that happens at our level, and I'd hoped that we would have kicked on from there. But as we'll go on to talk about, it didn't quite work out like that.
Yeah, it didn't in terms of the scoreline, which is literally all that matters. But I think the direction of the game did shift a little bit, and I think that largely hinged on the introduction of Lewis Gibson. Blair, did you think the Rovers were going to go on and win that? And give me your thoughts on Lewis Gibson's influence in the time that he was on the park.
I mean, yeah, when obviously we scored, and then immediately after it, or not immediately after it, but very, very shortly after it, the ball comes in for Josh Mullen at the back post, who has a really, really good time. And to be fair to him, it's a really difficult, it bounces right in front of him. You've got to really connect with it. But he'll want that back. There's no two ways about it. He'll be gutted at missing that. But at that point, you're thinking, yeah, it's a matter of time now. Like, we're knocking at the door. Then it seemed to go a little bit kind of flat after that. I was quite impressed with Gibson. I like his. It's kind of lazy. It's the same stuff everybody's going to talk about. You know, he's fearless and he's got a bit of guile about him and all the rest of it. But for a boy his age coming in, playing his first game against a championship side in a championship side. I know it's not a championship game, but first game at that kind of level. I thought he acquitted himself really well. He's direct. He gets his head down. He had a couple of shots at goal. He put a couple of balls into the box. He seems to be very two-footed as well. It took me a wee while to kind of figure out. I think he is right-footed because he seems to prefer his right. Very comfortable on his left. So yeah, promising. I certainly don't think. I think when you talked earlier about Kai Montague being in that level above where Jake Nicholson is, I think Gibson's probably a level above that as well. I think we're going to see a lot of him, actually. I don't think he's been signed as a prospect for the future quite in the same way that Montague has. I think he's probably more part of the squad. And what I really like about him is that he's different from every other wide player that we have. So you've now got Mullen, who is that kind of slightly deeper lying, likes to cross the ball from deep, very good delivery and all the rest of it, but it's not really a get to the box, beat a man kind of winger. And then you've got Easton and Connolly, who are far more that kind of, jinky and coming in from the outside and onto their preferred foot, having a go or quite happy crossing the ball in or whatever. We've now just got a boy who looks like he's just going to run at folk. Like, run right at them. Like, let's see what you've got. So now, yeah, pleased and quite optimistic actually for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with everything you've said there. Exactly that. Yeah, very direct. I thought the same thing, but he's very happy to just put a cross in his left foot, and perfectly serviceable crosses as well. I don't think there was too much came from them, but that wasn't because he was, hooking them into the stand or anything like that. It looked decent. And yeah, you're spot on. The difference between him and Kai Montague, Kai Montague's got a handful of games in the Lowland League. Lewis Gibson's played 50 times in League One and possibly a couple in the Championship.
I don't think he had. Based on his interview, he said he'd never. I heard that just listening to today. He said he'd never played in the Championship and looking forward to it. So I think that
makes sense because it's over 2 seasons at Queen of the South. So it must have been 2 seasons after they were relegated, obviously. So, but that's not a huge step up. League One to the Championship, and he looks ready for it. So definitely, I think we'll see Lewis Gibson most weeks, I would suspect, coming off the bench. Yeah, for the rest of the game, there's a few kind of little half chances. Dylan Easton goes into the sort of number 10 role when Lewis Gibson comes on, and I thought we saw a lot more from him than we did in the Stranraer game, which is when he was there previously, and I think that can be quite a weapon if he's drifting onto that left wing where Lewis Gibson's there and Lewis Stevenson's operating in the same area. Again, nothing massive came out of it. It didn't suddenly look like world beaters, but there's potential there, and it created a few kind of half chances. But really, yeah, I think the game kind of petered out. I don't think there was any great. I thought if either side were going to win it, I thought the Rovers looked more likely. But even at that, there was a kind of 5-10 minute period right towards the end where Aki's really let the kind of pressure off again. So it did kind of peter out to nothing. And then we had a penalty shootout that occurred. Callum, any comment on the penalties?
It was a lot less stressful than the last one. Quite a lot less stressful. Did it merit a pitch invasion as well?
Yeah, I think about all you can say to that is well done, Kevin Dabrowski. Saved a penalty, made the difference. All the other penalties were decent enough.
He should have taken the fifth.
Went in. He should have taken the first. Scott said that to me as we were coming out of the game. He's like, it's a meaningless penalty shootout. That is, we should be playing by like FIFA Street rules. There should be back heels and all sorts from both sides.
I heard at least one person near me just say, "Why is Kev not taking the first one?" And it's sort of like, yeah, we should do that, shouldn't we?
Absolutely.
We see that. Kevin Dabrowski will take a penalty against Duncan.
Given
today,
last 20 minutes,
we're going to be like 5-0 up.
Not kicking the ball for the last 20 minutes and letting Fordyce do it. I think it would have been quite ironic for him to step up and take a penalty kick.
I will say Kevin definitely should have happened. And it was the same today. Thistle and Motherwell had a pointless penalty shootout, and again, zero patter. What? What's the point, guys? Come on.
I was going to say, you were saying about Gibson being quite bow-footed. Kevin Dabrowski has learnt how to kick a ball.
Oh, his kicking was excellent yesterday.
It was excellent with both feet. It's incredible.
He's the complete package.
It's great to see. Best goalkeeper in the league by far now, as if he wasn't already.
Yeah, I do actually have in my notes for this. I do just have undisputed man of the match, question mark. Presumably, I think everybody who was at the game pretty much would have said Kevin Dabrowski's the man of the match. Which sounds like we've done a bit of a disservice because I'm just going to skip past that. But well done, Kev. That was excellent kind of standout performance. But in terms of discussion points, I want to just pull out a couple of names, just to kind of throw them around. 2 new signings. As you've seen a little bit of them now. I'm going to start with Callum Fordyce because I've got a bit of a point to make on this one, because I've seen a bit of criticism kind of after that game, and it's not over the top by any means at all, but from where I am looking at it, I think it's a little bit unfair because of how he plays the game. So I think he's getting a bit of criticism because some of his passes are being cut out. They're not necessarily going to where he wants them to go. But I think that's a byproduct of the fact that he always tries to play a pass. And I think that's a good thing. He's very deliberate when he's got the ball at his feet. He's not just knocking it up the park aimlessly. And even when he is knocking it up the park, and he did it a few times, he's very consciously kind of chipping the ball up to Jack Hamilton in a way that makes it easier for Jack Hamilton to play the ball back into his teammates, as opposed to just shelling it long where all he can do is header it on, despite the fact he's the furthest man forward. But Jack Hamilton did quite well in the first half in terms of getting his head on a couple of these balls, chesting a couple of them down, and largely it's kind of Fordyce playing them up. And as I see that, a natural result of that is that not every pass is going to reach its target, and there will be some where you're looking at it and it looks like he's made an error by, effectively giving the ball to the opposition. But if you've got a centre half who gets the ball 5 times in a row and all 5 times he just shells it long and it becomes a bit of a raffle, I think it's preferable to have someone who will try and play a pass all 5 times, even if one of those 5 actually ends up kind of being cut out. But actually, that was just me getting in my soapbox a little bit there. Leslie, what have been your kind of opening impressions of Callum Fordyce in all the time we've seen him so far?
I really can't have any complaints. I mean, you could have kind of, when you looked at who we were signing and you looked at where we might be looking to kick on from last season, bringing in a guy who was in his first season in the Championship and who was a bit older and who'd come up from League One, you could have said, well, is that really a step up? But you are bringing in one of the absolute best centre-backs last season. I think it was a graphic you'd posted, Duncan, on social media about the number of aerial duels that Fordyce had won last season, and probably only Gallagher and possibly Kevin Holt had done more. So you're bringing in one of the best centre-backs from the Championship from last season, with a very canny way of organising everybody at set pieces as well. I mean, one thing just to pick up on, I think, where we have kind of moved on, and this reference will probably go right over Callum's head, and possibly yours too, Duncan. So, Sabutio, before you had consoles for games, with Sabutio.
Aware of Sabutio.
Great, I'm glad to hear that.
I'm also aware of it.
Good.
I'm a little bit offended that it was never going to be over my head.
Yeah, I really like the brackets.
I was coming to you in a minute. I was coming to you in a minute because I was going to say, for those of you who are even older like me, and this will go over Blair's head, there was a thing called Sabutio Rugby, and you had a kicker, and it was this figure, and like if you were going to do a kick or a penalty or whatever, you flick this thing, and it went woof. And that's what Keith Watson was like. It was just the direction it was facing in. You flick this thing and boof, up the ball went. And it was that same shape, that kind of slightly hunched over, bang, kick straight up. Fordyce, like you say, does offer us something a bit different, which is that he will try and pass things out. And, we've seen him in games before. Actually, calling proactively, shouting, who's wanting this, who's moving, who's looking for it, which was what I often heard from behind me when I used to play fives, not very well, and usually aimed at me. I suppose the only concern I would have, and this isn't just Fordyce's fault, is that for a team that's supposedly now been built around strengthening and shoring up our defence, we have conceded in 3 consecutive games now. That's not Fordyce's fault. That's that's potentially a product of one of those games we against the Premier League side and us being missing centre backs for one of them. But it suggests there is still some work to do to get everybody bedded in and playing well together.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Where the other name that I've got down here is Kieran Freeman, come in at right back, and is very much the only right back, as is the Wraith Rovers way. What have been your initial impressions from Kieran Freeman?
So I'm probably in the minority, I think, at the moment, in the support, in the sense that I don't see what all the panic is about. I really don't. I think that he's clearly not played a huge... I think Les pointed this out in one of the previous podcasts. He's obviously not played a huge amount of football kind of recently, so he's kind of playing his way back in. He's clearly a player who's lacking a little bit of confidence, but the idea that somehow groaning every time he gets the ball and passes it inside is going to build his confidence, it kind of, I don't know, like it feels like a self-fulfilling prophecy at the moment. It's every fan seems to have picked out the fact that he's not, the most willing to go forward with the ball, or he's not kind of the most kind of, maybe not got the most self-belief. And so the way we're going to remedy that is by making him really self-conscious. I just, the Ross County game, so I snapped at somebody on Twitter and they deleted their tweet not long after it. But one of the very first comments after the Ross County game on the full-time tweet was, Kieran Freeman's crap, we need to get rid of him. What's he doing there, kind of thing. I'm like, have you even watched the game? He actually I thought he had a decent game against County, actually. He did pretty well. The two goals that we conceded against Ross County both came, as I've mentioned already, from James Brown down their right flank. Had that been down our right flank, he would have been blamed for it. 100% he would have been blamed for it. But because it's Stevenson who's on the left, nobody, I never saw any tweets, I never saw any comments, I never saw anybody saying Stevenson should have done better, Stevenson should have stopped the crosses, Stevenson at all. And I get that, but I feel like we're in a situation where we've got some players who are going to get so much, time and space and credit, and we've already got to the stage where Kieran Freeman is not one of them, and we're just going to pick every little mistake that he makes. And I kind of feel for him a bit. I think he's done fine. Yes, he can probably do a bit better. I don't think he's necessarily the best right back in the league. I think he's. I mean, you tell me who was available that we didn't go for. Do you know what I mean? It's not like there was a plethora of right backs kicking about waiting to get signed in the Championship. But yeah, that's me off my soapbox. But it's really starting to bug me, some of the negativity that we're getting to. It just feels really unfounded.
Yeah, hard to disagree with any of that. I hadn't actually realised that there was kind of that degree of kind of direct criticism. Although saying that, I did kind of touch on it indirectly in the last episode. I remember saying that there was a bit of kind of criticism for, he only blocked the first shot, not the second one, for the winning goal in that Ross County game. I don't know what else you want him to do. That I think is really unlucky. I mean, I will say he's definitely on evidence so far. Yeah, he's not kind of quote unquote my kind of fullback.
No.
Which obviously all of our players should be aiming to please me. That should be their primary aim. But I don't think he's looked out of place either. There's no game where I've come out of it thinking, like, oh, bloody hell, that's, anybody actually up to this point, like, really stinking the place out, like, significantly worse than anyone else. There are definitely points where, think, like, go on, Kieran, like, go beyond. Just go, have a wee go. But we're 4 games into the season, and even at that, League Cup games that there's not a huge amount of pressure on them really. It'll be interesting to see how he grows into himself as the season goes on. As you say, he's not had a lot of football, and I think your final point there about who else is available is a great one. Very publicly, very openly. Ourselves and Thistle have been in direct competition for a number of different positions going into this close season. Right back was one of them. They have not signed a right back yet, which I think speaks volumes. And I also think that if on the day that we signed Kieran Freeman, his agent had phoned Chris Doolan and said, look, for 50p extra, he'll come to you, I think he probably would have taken him. So yes, it will be interesting to see how that kind of develops across the rest of the season. And I think we'll pick up on a couple of other kind of new signings just for general thoughts and kind of episodes to come. But I think that will probably wrap us up in terms of the game from yesterday. I think we've wrung all of the juice that we possibly could out of that one. But before we leave you, we do have a final segment. Leslie has very kindly prepared Should McStay or Should Dargo for us, as is tradition when games don't have an awful lot of talking points, even though we're still going to take 50 minutes to talk about them. So Les, over to you, and hit us with your best shot.
Right, so I think that the disclaimer is I put this together at quite short notice, so I take full responsibility for any factual inaccuracies that may have come up, me and the various sites on the internet. So, your first clue is: I have never played for a club based more than 5 miles from the coast.
What the fuck? Oh.
Willie Akio.
Okay.
Aquaman. Who is Scottish football's Aquaman?
That'd be Danny Diver, wouldn't it? That's going to go over everybody's head.
Way.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to pass. I'm not convinced I've got to come up with a name that doesn't immediately embarrass me.
I'm going to pass as well, because why is that the first question, Les?
Okay, question 2. In my career, I have played in 3 of Scotland's 4 leagues.
Willie Akio then.
Did he not have any other loans from County?
No, I don't think so. He came to us and then unceremoniously went back to Canada.
Yes, he did go back to Canada.
Jai Katongo.
He's never played for
I'm
us.
going to play the João Pereira.
He's never played for us. That's the
it's
one.
not. Who's? Oh wait, no. Who? Oh fuck!
What the rule of this game?
Shit! Who am I thinking of? Is it Shell Victoria I'm thinking of?
You could be thinking of João Victoria. It's very
That might be
difficult
who
for
I'm
us to
thinking
answer
of.
that.
Yeah, Shell Victoria. He played for us.
Eh,
I'm going to get cancelled on Twitter now.
Never more than 5 miles from the coast.
I think how far Dunfermline is from a coast. This is where your geography comes in as well. Like,
It's within 5 miles, surely, because it's
gotta be,
Dunfermline then Versailles.
gotta be. Jeez. Bobby.
Oh, Jason Thompson.
Kelty. Definitely.
No, Kelty's
No,
too far
Kelty.
inland, isn't it?
Does throw in Arbroath though.
Arbroath was my starting point for that. Although it's fair enough, we've been given a distance of 5 miles, and Arbroath's like 18
5
feet.
centimetres.
Give it 10 years and it is in the sea.
So who else? Arbroath, Montrose. I mean, 5 miles. Easter Road?
Well, I was thinking Edinburgh. But I suppose Tynecastle will be 5 miles. So maybe Eastern.
Tynecastle's within it. Tynecastle and Easter Road are within 5 miles. Aberdeen, with Pittodrie and Cove.
Inverness.
Greenock Morton. Ayr United.
I think we need another
no.
clue. We're just naming football teams now.
I'm just going to name football teams. I will just spend this whole thing just going through every single team.
Gregory Taddy is going to be my guest for this round.
Okay.
How far is Stow Bucharest from the coast?
I have no idea, but Tranrare's right on the coast.
Bucharest is a bit inland. It's on the Danube, but it's still about 100 miles from the Black Sea.
That's really good geography knowledge. But it's
Thank
also
you,
not
I
entirely...
sit in my room and look at maps. I'm really sorry.
So, we've got Callum's going with the João Pereira Victoria. Blair's going with Gregory Daddy. Duncan, are you going with Jason Thompson?
Yeah, just in case Kelly's moved.
Right. Number 3. I have played 32 league games for Wraith Rovers.
32.
Right, so that's either like a starter who's been here for a season or a bit part player who was here for 2. You've got to think.
Yeah.
I think it still might be Zhao, so I'll stick. Also because I can't think of anything else.
I don't think he played as many as 32 games for us.
That's the thing in my head. I'm like, I could have sworn he was only at the club for a season, but did he play 32 games in a season, or like you're saying, was he a bit part player over 2 seasons? That's he might have just come off the bench every other game.
Grant Anderson.
32 league games?
Oh yeah, he's more than that, isn't he?
I
Way more than that.
think he played a wee bit more than that.
I can't actually think of it. Oh no, hang on. I can only think of one. It's Alloa. It's definitely not 5 miles away. That was only half a sentence. I'm not even going to tell you who the player was.
Oh, right. Sorry, I am.
Al was technically coastal.
Final answer on this round: Ethan Ross.
He's for Falkirk. Sorry, I know I'm just debunking your answers, which is
right on the coast.
Is much easier than giving my own.
Technically
But
coastal.
what?
Technically.
The Green.
Not Falkirk,
Which
it's
coast?
Asia. But the 4th is tidal all the way up to Stirling.
It's the coast.
If you want to go,
that's
if
the
Connie
coast.
counts as
Rather
coastal,
than the sea.
then Grangemouth
Okay.
does, Alloa does, because the 4th's tidal all the way up.
Thank you, Callum,
Right, well-
for providing the definition I was working with. I hope any of your lecturers are
You're
listening.
welcome, because I had to explain that to a bunch of Australians because they were confused by the
Fine.
boats being in the mud. It dies at harbour.
Right, I'm going to say Kevin Moon.
Oh, good
Okay.
answer.
Because he controls the tides. Right.
I
Okay.
swear to God, if that's the answer, Les. If that's the reason why you made it Kevin Moon, you've come with this.
Okay, so question 4. I have won the Scottish Championship.
Well, it's not Shell Victoria.
Not Ethan Ross.
Ross Callaghan.
Mm.
Nah, he'd be more than
Because he
that.
was
Must have played more than 32 games as well.
That's a good point, because I'm just thinking, it's like he was in League One in the Championship with us, I think.
He never was.
Kevin Nisbet.
Either he moved to Hearts and then moved to Ross.
No, Kevin Nisbet didn't. Oh, fuck.
I think it's Keith Watson. No, I can't have played 32 league games. Stupid.
32 minutes. 32 league games. Never played. Dundee.
No, Achilles too far away.
Josh Mullen.
Willie Dyer.
Okay. So after round 4, we have...
John Byrne.
Are you going with Ross Callaghan or Sean Byrne? Callum?
Sean Byrne.
Okay.
Because I don't
So-
think Callahan's from the Championship.
So if Duncan going with Josh Mullen, Blair going with Willie Dyer, and Callum going with Sean Byrne. Clue 5. I have been in squads that have been in the Premiership playoff 3 times.
I'm going to stick with Josh Mullen. That feels Mullen-y to me.
I'm going to stick with Willie Dyer.
I'm sticking with Sean Byrne.
Sean Byrne could be.
Right.
He plays many as 32 games.
I don't think he missed much last season.
And clue 6. I have been in the squad for 2 of Wraith Rovers' most memorable results at Easter Road.
Whoa.
Shit, it's not Sean Burton.
Right, hang on a second. I need to just conjure Robbie's 13 players that he named.
Ross
Sorry, Blair?
Wait, let me just miss
Ross
Robbie.
Laidlaw.
Hang on. So it's like, oh,
He was on the
Paul
bench for
Watson.
the Ramsdens, and I think he played in the game that the backwards head of Grant Anderson.
I think he did too.
And I think the fact that you said in the squad is important. Les is a details man.
Yeah. Right, it's not going to be Reece Donaldson. It's not.
And Ross Laidlaw would have won the championship with Ross County. Or Hibs.
And he would have played in League One and the Championship and Premiership, but not League Two.
And would have played about 30 games for us. And you notice he never mentioned anything about goals.
I'm increasingly convinced by your argument, Blair.
I don't know why I'm trying to convince you. It's either right or it's wrong, right?
Yeah, I can't think who else it would be. I think I'm prepared to cede at this point.
Callum, you want to stick your neck out?
No.
Well, Blair is absolutely right. It is indeed Ross Laidlaw.
Well done.
Delighted with that.
Good smozding, Blair. Well done.
That was good.
And an excellent set of clues as well. That first one's a belter. That's the kind of esoteric stuff that I think this game needs more of.
Yeah.
For one
I'm glad
bonus
you're
point,
bringing up
can anybody tell me
Alloa and Falkirk.
which current Rover scored against Ross Laidlaw in the 3-2 Cup win?
Say that again?
Which current Rover scored against Ross Laidlaw?
Yes. Sam Stanton.
Correct.
That's right. In the same game. The
A very
game
small bit of...
the back was in
I
it.
get a half point back. Right, bro. Sorry, I forgot I was hosting the episode there. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Leslie, for putting that together, especially at short notice. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We will be back later in the week ahead of the big kickoff in Airdrie on Saturday. In the meantime, you can find us in all the usual places and in a slightly more unusual place. If you want to hear more from Scott in particular, he was featured in an episode of The Terrace that Craig Cairns put together at yesterday's game. It is on their Patreon, so it'll cost you a couple of quid a month to get access and to listen to it. But that is well worth it, in my humble opinion. I don't think anybody's doing kind of Scottish, particularly Scottish lower league coverage, any better than those guys. So, as I say, thank you again, and that'll do us for tonight. Goodbye.